So what would you say to somebody who says, "Yeah, God like loves me because God is God and God has to love me, but I actually don't even know if he actually likes me."
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I've spent the last 18 years probably talking to different rooms of people about the love of God, and it's funny because you can share emotional stories, you can read scriptures, and there's this mechanism in us, right, that will immediately, and some attribute that to shame, right? It's that you'll hear this thing and it'll land in your head, but then immediately there's this yeah but what about, right, that surfaces from this deeper place in us. With humans it's often, well, these people love me, but if they knew this about me, right, then they wouldn't accept me. And that's one of the reasons why vulnerability is so important in a healthy way. One of my favorite quotes is, you can only be loved to the extent that you're known. And one of the reasons for that is because the love or affection that people give away will only penetrate as deep as you're actually revealing of yourself to them. And so, as far as that thing about, yeah, God loves me because God has to love me, or God loves me, it doesn't matter because God loves everybody. So why is that special? Um, yeah, that's a real thing, right? Or God loves me, but God doesn't like me. I have to tell you an embarrassing fathering story, parenting story. So about four and a half, no, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, we had just moved to the Central Coast back from China, and we were down at Avila Beach visiting this family we'd heard about for years that we were told that we need to meet together with and get to know. So we're at this playground, and it's me and my wife Sarah and our two boys at the time, Joshua and Zachary, and then a bunch of these other friends that we were hanging out with. And I had just been introduced to the husband, and I had been looking forward to getting to know him. And my wife was introduced to his wife, and so we were both having our separate conversations. And there was this assumption going on that both of us were kind of like that the other one was keeping tabs on how the kiddos were doing. And Joshua, our oldest, was, I think, probably about 8 or 9 at the time. Um, Maybe a little bit younger. But our little guy, I think he was about 3.5 or 4, and Zachary, he was about 3.5 or 4. And Sarah, my wife, looks over at me from across the playground, and she just kind of looks at me with a concerned look on her face and mouths the words, trying not to interrupt my conversation. She's like, "Where's Zachary?" It's kind of and my response, without being too obvious, was kind of like, "I thought you were watching him." And it was like, so we had this whole conversation just through kind of signals and looks and eyebrows and stuff, and realized that we had no idea where our almost 4-year-old Zachary was. So the panic level started to escalate a little bit. And so we asked our other son, Josh, "Where's your little brother?" And he looked around and he's like, "I have no idea." And so we kind of, we stopped the conversations we were in and we started looking around, and then things started to dawn on us. Like, there was a road really close by, a really busy road, and our concern, he was nowhere near the playground, wasn't under the slides, wasn't in the tires, wasn't anywhere. And we went and checked the road, was one of the first places we looked. He wasn't over by the road. And we looked all around the whole playground and couldn't find him anywhere. And so after about 4 or 5 minutes of looking everywhere we could think to look, I walked over to my wife and I put my arm around her and I was like, "Baby, I know that I think today we lost Zachary, and that's a devastating thing, but it's going to be okay because at least we still have Joshua." And if you're watching this right now and you have any soul in you, you're probably wanting to throw your device or computer or whatever you're watching this on, because you know that there's no way on earth that I would ever say that about losing one of my children. And you can go through it logically and say, well, it's true, right? I mean, we do still have Joshua, and our love for him is profound and incredible. But what does that have to do with Zachary? Our love for Zachary is unique. It's perfectly tailor made for who he is with all of our being. And still having Joshua has nothing to do with the profound loss that we would experience if something were to ever happen to Zachary. And by the way, so I did not say that. I just say that for the point of the story messing with your head. Because no, I would never say that. And turns out it felt like eternity, right? It was probably only like 4 or 5 minutes, but Sarah finally walks back with Zachary. So you have to picture Zach his like big red curly hair, right? And really white complexion. And she had found him underneath this big, huge tent of this Mexican birthday party of probably like 50 or 60 Mexicans. And Zachary had kind of woven his way into the middle and was sitting down at the very center of the party, helping the birthday kid open presents, just like he totally belonged there. And this was, maybe 100 yards down the beach. But we had eventually found him. But just the ridiculousness of the thought that it would be okay to lose Zachary because we still had another son. And how could we even think that about God? As if God's love for us isn't unique and tailor-made and infinite and vast, but also specifically directed to us in our uniqueness. And it's not necessarily easy to get that. So God is finding many, many, many ways over the course of our lives to let that land on us. But the reality is that just because God loves everyone doesn't take anything away from your uniqueness, your value, your beauty, your specialness, God's fondness of you for your very personhood. That in spite of being an infinitely joyful being, God would still be tremendously grieved at any breaking of relationship between you and God, because that's how much you matter.